One of my favorite movies is When Harry Met Sally, written by Norah Ephron. Now, Norah Ephron isn't just a movie writer. She also penned a book called Heartburn. This book is pretty special because it's loosely based on her own life, especially her marriage to Carl Bernstein. Carl's a well-known guy since he was one of the reporters who uncovered the Watergate scandal. The thing about Heartburn is that it's a novel, but it's only slightly fictionalized VDGE. Most of it is based on true events from Norah's life. They even made a movie out of this book where Meryl Streep plays Norah and Jack Nicholson plays Carl. In the story, Carl is not exactly the best husband. He's self-centered, very into himself, and on top of that, he cheats a lot. The worst part is that Norah finds out he's cheating when she's pregnant, which shatters her world. By the end of the story, she's had enough and decides to leave Carl and start a new life as a single mom with a very young child. Now, flipping back to my own life, things are kind of parallel. My wife, who will soon be my ex-wife, cheated on me with her boss. Honestly, it feels like she was leading a double life. She would go on these trips that were supposed to be for work, but really, she was vacationing with her boss. I tried to make things work for 2 years, but it just wasn't happening. So, I finally put my foot down and gave her an ultimatum: change jobs or we're getting a divorce. She didn't want to change jobs, so here we are. I went ahead and filed for divorce. Since then, I've been really pushing hard to get as much custody as I can of our 2 young children. She's been fighting too, especially over child support. All this is just the background stuff. Right now, my wife and I are still living under the same roof while we wait for the divorce to go through. Even though we hardly talk, like we almost literally do not speak at all, I still get these little glimpses into what she's thinking and what her life is about these days. It's weird and tough, but that's how things are right now. The other day, something really caught my eye and made me stop and think. My wife, who's soon to be my ex, brought home a copy of Heartburn from the library. You know, the book by Norah Ephron that doesn't exactly paint a pretty picture of infidelity. It struck me as odd. Why would she pick this book? It's hard to imagine someone in her shoes, someone who has cheated, finding this an enjoyable read given its tough stance on cheating. Then it hit me during dinner VEDG maybe she doesn't see herself as the Carl Bernstein character, the cheater in Heartburn. Maybe in her mind, she's Norah Ephron, the wrong party who's been abandoned. See, I was the one who filed for divorce, not her. In her view, she's the victim here, the one being forced out into the cold, harsh world as a single mom, much like Ephron's character in the book. Over the past few months, she's made it clear numerous times. She says things like, "I never wanted a divorce, and you're the one who chose to divorce me." The level of self-deception and justification she's wrapped herself in is just staggering. It's almost to the point where you'd think it borders on delusion. But then, this kind of self-deception and justification isn't new for her. It's the same kind she used to excuse her affair with her boss, including her refusal to quit her job even after I confronted her. It's astonishing how detached from reality she seems to be about the whole situation. From what I've seen, people who cheat live in a different reality. They don't think like everyone else. It's a tough lesson to learn, but it's true. Cheaters twist things to fit their narrative, and it's a painful truth we sometimes have to face head-on. Now, thinking about how my wife views herself in this story, it makes me see her in a different light. She's got this twisted sense of entitlement, as if her actions are justified because, in her mind, she's the wronged party. She acts like she's the one who's been hurt the most in this situation. It's mind-boggling. Like, she genuinely believes she's the victim and I'm the villain for wanting a divorce after everything she's done. The nerve of her bringing home that book just shows how deep in denial she really is. So while we're still under the same roof, things are beyond tense. It's not just the silent treatment, it's the little digs she makes, the snide comments about how I'm ruining everything. She'll say stuff like, "If you hadn't been so controlling, maybe I wouldn't have needed to find someone who appreciates me." I mean, seriously? It's like she's living in some alternate universe where I'm the bad guy for not wanting to stay married to a cheater. It's maddening. At this point, I'm just focused on getting through the divorce and securing custody of our kids. I want to make sure they're in a stable environment and not caught up in her crazy web of lies and deceit. It's hard enough dealing with my own feelings about the betrayal without having to navigate her constant manipulation and mind games. She's got this way of turning everything around to make herself the victim, and it's exhausting. Anyway, I've been doing a lot of thinking about how to move forward. The way she's acting now just reinforces my decision to divorce her. There's no way we could ever go back to how things were. Not that I even want to anymore. I deserve better. And so do our kids. They deserve a parent who's honest and dependable, not someone who's always looking for the next excuse to justify their bad behavior. So that's where things stand right now. I'm working on building a new life for myself and my kids, one step at a time. It's not easy, but I know it's the right thing to do. And maybe one day, I'll look back on all this and see it as a turning point. The moment when I finally stood up for myself and refused to let someone else's lies and betrayal define my life. Things didn't get any easier as we continued living under the same roof. My soon-to-be ex-wife, Kelly, made it her mission to make life as difficult as possible. Every day was like walking on eggshells. She'd leave dirty dishes in the sink, laundry piled up, and then blame me for not helping out enough. If you weren't so lazy, maybe the house wouldn't be such a mess, she'd snap, acting like it was my fault she couldn't handle basic chores. It was clear she wanted to make me as miserable as she could, maybe in some twisted way to make herself feel better about the mess she created. It wasn't just the housework either. Kelly would purposely plan loud phone calls with her friends when I was trying to work or relax. She'd laugh loudly and gossip, often talking about our personal issues as if it was some sort of soap opera for them to enjoy. "I can't believe he's doing this to me," she'd say, knowing full well I could hear her. It was infuriating, but I tried my best to stay calm for the kids' sake. They didn't need to see us fighting all the time. One day, she had the audacity to bring up the idea of us going to couples therapy. I couldn't believe my ears. After everything she'd done, now she wanted to fix things? "You think therapy is going to fix your cheating?" I asked, unable to keep the anger out of my voice. Kelly just shrugged. "Maybe if you were a better husband, I wouldn't have had to look elsewhere." That was the final straw. It was clear she was never going to take responsibility for her actions. I started making plans to move out as soon as possible. Staying in that toxic environment was taking its toll on me, and I didn't want the kids to be affected any more than they already were. I found a small apartment close enough to their school so I could still be involved in their daily lives. Kelly wasn't happy about it, but at this point, I didn't care about her feelings. It was time to prioritize my own well-being and that of our children. The day I moved out, she didn't even help. She just watched as I packed my things, making snide comments. "Don't forget your box of regrets," she said, smirking. I ignored her, focusing on getting out of there as quickly as I could. As I was leaving, she said, "You'll be back. You can't handle life without me." I didn't respond. There was no point in arguing with her anymore. Settling into my new place was a mix of relief and sadness. It was small and sparsely furnished, but it was peaceful. No more constant arguing, no more mind games. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe. I set up a room for the kids, making sure they felt comfortable and at home when they stayed with me. It wasn't much, but it was ours. In the following weeks, Kelly continued to make things difficult. She'd show up unannounced, dropping the kids off late or picking them up early without any notice. She'd send nasty text messages, accusing me of being a deadbeat dad and ruining her life. "You're a joke," she'd write. "The kids deserve better than a loser like you." I saved every message, knowing I'd need them for the custody battle. Despite her efforts to drag me down, I focused on being the best dad I could be. I took the kids to the park, helped them with their homework, and made sure they knew they were loved. It wasn't easy balancing everything, but it was worth it. Slowly but surely, I started to rebuild my life. I reconnected with old friends, picked up hobbies I'd neglected, and even started going to the gym. One day, while scrolling through social media, I stumbled across a post from Kelly. She'd uploaded pictures from a work trip she'd taken with her boss, the same one she'd cheated with. The caption read, "Living my best life." It was a slap in the face, but it also reminded me why I'd left. She was never going to change. Her selfishness and lack of remorse were crystal clear. I also noticed that she had started dating again. She posted pictures with a new guy, acting like she was some sort of saint who'd been wronged. Her friends and followers left comments like, "You deserve so much better," and "He's a lucky guy." It was sickening to see how she manipulated everyone into believing her version of the story. As I focused on moving forward, I made sure to document everything. Every missed pickup, every nasty message, every instance where she put herself before the kids. I wanted to be fully prepared for the custody hearing. My lawyer assured me that these records would help my case, and I clung to that hope. The thought of losing my kids to her manipulative ways was unbearable. One evening, after dropping the kids off at Kelly's, I sat in my empty apartment feeling a mix of exhaustion and determination. This wasn't how I'd envisioned my life turning out, but I wasn't going to let her win. I looked at the photos of my kids on the wall, their smiling faces reminding me why I was fighting so hard. They deserved a stable, loving home, and I was going to make sure they got it. As the days turned into weeks, I started seeing a therapist to help me process everything. It wasn't easy opening up about the pain and betrayal, but it was necessary. The therapist helped me see that I wasn't to blame for Kelly's actions. She had made her choices, and now it was up to me to make better ones for myself and my kids. I also joined a support group for divorced dads. Hearing their stories and sharing my own made me feel less alone. We laughed about the absurdity of our situations and offered each other advice and encouragement. It was a small community, but it was exactly what I needed. Through therapy and the support group, I began to heal. I learned to set boundaries with Kelly, refusing to engage in her mind games and manipulations. If she sent a nasty text, I'd respond calmly and factually, or not at all. If she showed up unannounced, I'd remind her of our agreed-upon schedule. It wasn't easy, but it started to make a difference. One weekend, as I was having a barbecue with the kids, my neighbor Steve came over. Steve was a single dad too, and we'd bonded over our shared experiences. He brought over some burgers and a cooler of beer, and we sat on the porch watching the kids play. "You're doing a great job, man," Steve said, clinking his beer bottle against mine. "It's not easy, but you're handling it better than most." Hearing that meant the world to me. For so long, I'd felt like I was failing, barely holding things together. But in that moment, I realized I was stronger than I'd given myself credit for. I was building a new life, one day at a time, and I was doing it for my kids and myself. As I continued to rebuild my life, the custody battle with Kelly dragged on. She was relentless, always looking for new ways to make things difficult. She'd show up to court hearings with exaggerated tales about how I was an unfit father, trying to paint herself as the perfect, wronged woman. "He never supported me emotionally," she'd say, her voice dripping with insincerity. "I had to find comfort elsewhere because he just wasn't there for me." It was maddening to sit there and listen to her lies, but I knew I had to stay composed for the sake of our kids. Kelly's manipulative tactics extended beyond the courtroom. She'd fill the kids' heads with nonsense, trying to turn them against me. "Your dad doesn't really care about you," she'd whispered to them. "He just wants to hurt me, and you're caught in the middle." It broke my heart to see my kids confused and torn, not knowing who to believe. I did my best to reassure them, to show them through my actions that I loved them more than anything. One evening, I overheard a conversation between Kelly and our daughter, Emily. "Mommy, why does Daddy hate you?" Emily asked, her little voice filled with concern. Kelly sighed dramatically. "He's just angry because I moved on. He doesn't want to see me happy." I felt a surge of anger and sadness. How could she be so cruel as to manipulate our child's emotions like that? I knew I had to counteract her poison with love and consistency. Every time the kids were with me, I made sure they felt safe and loved. We'd have movie nights, cook their favorite meals, and play games together. I wanted to create positive memories for them, to give them something stable to hold on to. Slowly but surely, I saw the effects of Kelly's manipulations start to fade. The kids began to relax more around me, laughing and smiling like they used to. One particularly difficult weekend, Kelly decided to throw a wrench in our plans. She texted me last minute, claiming she couldn't take the kids because of an emergency. Knowing her, it was probably just another excuse to shirk her responsibilities. "Figure it out," she snapped over the phone. "It's not my problem if you can't handle them on your own." I bit my tongue, refusing to let her get a rise out of me. "I'll take care of it," I said calmly, hanging up before she could spew more venom. That weekend, I had planned to catch up on some work, but with the kids unexpectedly staying with me, those plans went out the window. Instead, we spent the time baking cookies, building a fort in the living room, and having a mini camping trip in the backyard. The kids loved it, and by the end of the weekend, they were beaming with happiness. Seeing their joy made all the sacrifices worth it. One day, I received a call from my lawyer. "James," she said, "I have some good news. The judge is leaning in your favor for primary custody." Relief washed over me. It felt like a small victory in the ongoing war. "Thanks, Karen," I said, my voice shaking with emotion. I really appreciate all your help. She assured me that we still had a way to go, but this was a positive step forward. Kelly, of course, didn't take the news well. She stormed over to my place, demanding to speak to me. "You're trying to take my kids away," she screamed, her face red with anger. "You think you can just replace me?" I stood my ground, refusing to be intimidated by her outburst. "I'm doing what's best for them," I replied calmly. "They need stability, something you clearly can't provide." Her eyes narrowed, and she let out a bitter laugh. "You'll regret this," she hissed before storming off. Despite the ongoing drama, I continued to focus on creating a positive environment for my kids. We started a little garden in the backyard, planting tomatoes, cucumbers, and flowers. It was therapeutic for all of us, watching something grow and flourish through our care. Emily and her brother Jake loved getting their hands dirty, and it gave us a sense of accomplishment. One sunny Saturday, we decided to have a picnic in the park. I packed sandwiches, fruit, and some homemade cookies, and we set off for a day of fun. As we sat on the blanket, enjoying the sunshine and each other's company, I felt a sense of peace that had been missing for a long time. "Dad," Jake said, looking up at me with his big brown eyes, "I'm glad we get to spend so much time together." My heart swelled with pride and love. "Me too, buddy," I replied, ruffling his hair. As the months went by, I noticed a change in myself too. I was starting to let go of the anger and bitterness that had consumed me for so long. Therapy and the support group were helping, but it was also the simple joys of everyday life that were healing me. Watching my kids grow, reconnecting with old hobbies, and building new friendships all contributed to my sense of renewal. One evening, I got a call from an old friend, Mike. We hadn't talked much since the divorce, but he'd heard about everything through the grapevine. "Hey man," he said, "I heard what you're going through. Just wanted to check in and see how you're holding up." We talked for hours, catching up on life and reminiscing about the good old days. It felt good to reconnect, to remember that there were people who cared about me. Mike invited me to join a local softball league he was part of. "It'll be fun," he said. "A good way to blow off some steam and meet new people." I hesitated at first, but he convinced me to give it a shot. It turned out to be one of the best decisions I'd made in a long time. Not only did it provide a much-needed outlet for my frustrations, but it also introduced me to a great group of people who became friends. As I settled into my new routine, I began to feel more confident about the future. I knew there would still be challenges ahead, but I was better equipped to handle them. The kids were thriving. I was finding my footing again, and I was no longer living under the shadow of Kelly's manipulations. One evening, after tucking the kids into bed, I sat down with a cup of coffee and reflected on how far we'd come. There was still a long road ahead, but for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful. I was learning to live for myself and my kids, to find happiness in the small moments, and to appreciate the new life we were building together. Life continued to move forward, and I was determined to make the most of it. Kelly's attempts to sabotage my happiness didn't stop, but I was better prepared to deal with them. One day she showed up at my apartment unannounced as usual. "I'm taking the kids for the weekend," she declared, not even bothering to ask if it was okay. "You can't just show up and make demands, Lisa," I replied, trying to keep my cool. "We have a schedule for a reason." She rolled her eyes. "Oh, please, like you're such a stickler for rules." It was always a battle with her, but I wasn't going to let her win. "I'm following the court order," I said firmly. "If you have a problem with that, take it up with your lawyer." She huffed and stormed off, muttering under her breath about how unreasonable I was. I watched her go, shaking my head. She never seemed to grasp that her actions had consequences. Despite her antics, my relationship with the kids continued to strengthen. They were adjusting well to the new routine, and I could see them becoming more relaxed and happy. We spent weekends exploring parks, visiting museums, and just enjoying each other's company. I made it a point to be present and involved in their lives, something I realized I should have done more of even before all this happened. One evening, as we were having dinner, Emily asked, "Dad, why does Mom always seem so angry?" It was a tough question, and I struggled to find the right words. "Sometimes people are unhappy with themselves," I explained gently, and they take it out on others. It's not right, but it happens. Jake looked thoughtful. So it's not our fault? My heart ached for them. No, it's not your fault, I reassured them. You both are amazing, and none of this is because of you. As the months went by, the custody battle finally came to a close. The judge awarded me primary custody, recognizing that I could provide a more stable environment for the kids. Lisa was furious, of course. She accused me of manipulating the system and turning the kids against her. You'll pay for this, she spat. But I didn't let her threats intimidate me. I knew I had done what was best for our children. With the custody battle behind me, I focused on building a new life for us. The kids and I settled into a routine, and I found a sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. I started dating again, cautiously at first, not wanting to rush into anything. It was strange to put myself out there, but I knew I deserved happiness too. One evening, I met a woman named Laura at a friend's barbecue. She was kind, funny, and had a warmth about her that I hadn't encountered in a long time. We hit it off, and after a few dates, I realized I was genuinely happy. Laura understood my situation and was incredibly supportive. She met the kids, and they took to her right away, something that meant the world to me. As Laura and I grew closer, I found myself opening up to her about everything I had been through. She listened without judgment, offering comfort and understanding. "You've been through a lot," she said softly one evening, "but you've come out stronger because of it." Her words meant a lot, and I knew I had found someone special. One weekend, as we were all having a picnic in the park, I watched Laura playing with the kids. They were laughing and chasing each other, and I felt a deep sense of contentment. This was what I had been fighting for, a stable, happy life for my children and myself. It hadn't been easy, but it was worth every struggle. Lisa continued to be a presence in our lives, but her power over me had diminished. She still tried to cause problems, but I was better equipped to handle her now. I documented everything, stayed calm during our interactions, and made sure the kids knew they were loved and supported. Over time, they saw through her manipulations and understood who truly had their best interests at heart. One day, Emily came home from a visit with Lisa and looked upset. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" I asked, pulling her into a hug. "Mom said you're trying to replace her," she said, tears in her eyes. I sighed, feeling a familiar frustration. "No one can replace your mom," I said gently. "Laura and I just want to make sure you're happy and loved. That's all that matters." Jake nodded. "We know, Dad. We love Laura, and we love you too." Hearing those words from my children filled me with pride and relief. They were strong, resilient, and wise beyond their years. I knew we were on the right path. As the years went by, things continued to improve. Laura and I grew even closer, and I eventually asked her to marry me. She said yes, and we blended our families into one. The kids adored her, and she treated them as if they were her own. Our home was filled with laughter, love, and the stability I had fought so hard to achieve. Lisa's influence waned over time. She moved on with her life, and though she still tried to cause drama now and then, it no longer had the same impact. The kids saw through her tactics, and they knew who was there for them consistently. I continued to focus on being the best father I could be, and it paid off in the form of happy, well-adjusted children. Looking back on everything, I realized how far I had come. The pain and betrayal I had felt when I discovered Lisa's affair had been overwhelming, but it had also pushed me to become a better person. I had learned to stand up for myself, to prioritize my children, and to find happiness despite the obstacles. It hadn't been easy, but I was proud of the life I had built. One evening, as we were all sitting around the dinner table, I felt a sense of gratitude wash over me. My kids were laughing, Laura was smiling, and I felt at peace. Life had thrown some tough challenges my way, but I had overcome them. I had built a new life from the ashes of the old one, and it was more beautiful than I could have ever imagined. In the end, I realized that the journey was just as important as the destination. The struggles, the pain, and the hard-fought victories had shaped me into the man I was today. I was stronger, wiser, and more compassionate because of it. And as I looked around at my family, I knew that every step of the journey had been worth it. Life wasn't perfect, and it never would be. But it was real, it was mine, and it was filled with love. That was more than enough. And as we moved forward, I knew that we could face whatever challenges came our way, together.